14:16 says that Jesus answered, I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. Through every battle, through every heartbreak, through every circumstance, I believe that you are my fortress. Oh, you are my portion. You are my hiding place. Oh, I believe you are the way, the truth, the life. I believe you are the way, the truth, the life. I believe through every blessing, through every promise, through every breath I take. I believe that you are provider, you are protector, you are the one I love. I believe you are the way, the truth, the life. I believe you are the way, the truth, the life. I believe you are. Oh, you are. Oh, you are. It's a new horizon, and I'm set on you. And you meet me here today with mercies that are new. All my fears and doubts, they can all come true, because they can't stay long when I'm here with you. It's a new horizon, and I'm set on you. And you meet me here today with mercies that are new. All my fears and doubts, they can all come true, because they can't stay long when I believe you are the way, the truth, the life. I believe you are the way, the truth, the life. I believe you are. It's a new horizon, and I'm set on you. And you meet me here today, mercies that are new. All my fears and doubts, they can all come true, because they can't stay long when I believe you are the way, the truth, the life. I believe you are the way, the truth, the life. I believe you are. Oh God, we believe you are. That you are the way, you are the help in every problem we have, everything we face, every circumstance. And you are our joy of our lives. And all we seek to do is to serve you and to love you and to praise you and worship you. As we continue to worship, God, we pray to you your prayer, which says, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. Amen. Please be seated.
guests with us today, we want to welcome you. And if you don't know who I am, my name is Jamie Hamrick. I'm the senior pastor here. We are going to be having a new members class starting next week at the 11 o'clock service. So if you ever wondered about what the church is about, where we're going, the history, all those different things, we're going to have a 4-week class starting next week. Just sign up in your connection slip, or you can give us a call here at the church at 704-528-5525. I also want to tell you about next Saturday from 9 to 2 is the annual Rocky Mount Car and Bike Show. So we've got plenty of cars, we've got plenty of volunteers, and we are excited for our community. So invite as many people as you know and come out and see some really cool stuff. Rocky Mount, I have one more important blessing to tell you about today. We have a new interim youth pastor, and most of you already know her. Her name is Tammy Gary, and I'm going to let her start explaining what's going to happen next.
So tonight, as usual, we will not have youth for Labor Day. Hang out with your family and friends at the lake or wherever you enjoy spending time. Come back and be with us on September 8th. Hang time will start at 5:30. Youth will end around 7:30. We look forward to seeing you, and I can't wait to see what God's going to do with our program. Bye.
As the ushers prepare to come forward and we receive our tithes and offerings, I've got a question for you. How many of you know someone who has had cancer? How many of you have had, keep your hands up. How many of you have had cancer? Keep your hands up. All of you, keep your hands up. If you've raised your hand, keep them up. How many of you have had a friend or a loved one pass away from cancer? Yeah, look around. To say that cancer affects us is an understatement. Do you know that this year alone, over 1 million people will be given that diagnosis? Will go to the doctor thinking everything's okay and be given that diagnosis of cancer. Over 1 million people in the United States. It's overwhelming to think about. And so your nurture committee got the idea that there are a lot of people out there suffering through cancer, dealing with cancer, and living with cancer. And wouldn't it be great if God could be in the center of that? And so I am so excited about this new ministry. Cancer Companions is a study, but it's not. It's a Bible study, but it's not. It's a support group, but it's not. It's so much more than that. And it begins September the 12th. So if you know anyone who raised their hand, anyone that might have been affected or is currently living with cancer, we invite them out and invite you out to be a part of Cancer Companions September the 12th at 6:30 in the Boathouse. Join us. There are some great, loving facilitators that are ready to meet you in your journey no matter where you are. To kick off this ministry, though, we are going to have a wonderful night of worship next Sunday. So if you just like the great music here at Rocky Mount, show up. If you're someone living with cancer, come on and join us. If you're someone that's a caregiver, or maybe you work in the health field and you see folks that struggle with cancer every day, or maybe you have something going on that has something completely different from cancer but causes you to struggle and to stress, come out next Sunday night, 6 o'clock, right here in the sanctuary for a great time to fellowship, to worship, for prayer, and for healing. If the ushers would please come forward.
Runs That was awesome. Thanks, guys. How y'all doing this morning? I'm doing good. Thank you very much. We are ending up a series today on you in 5 years. We've been talking about taking a look at our life. What does God want us to do? Who does God want us to be in 5 years? And we kind of talked about why do we want to change and how we'll change and when we'll make those changes and just the whole idea of the planning. But this week, I want to ask the question, what? But not just what if? What if our 5-year plans don't go as planned? What if our plans fail or life happens differently than we thought? What if I say, okay, God, I'm going to step out here on faith and I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to take on this venture, whatever it is you want me to do. And what if it doesn't work out? What if? And I want to look at a story from the life of Jesus that will help us as we ask this what if question. And I want to break it down really simply because I think a lot of times we make following Jesus too complicated. Now, sometimes following Jesus is hard, but it's really not complicated. And to do this, I'm going to read this story, a story I think probably a lot of you have heard, from a children's Bible. And I'm big on kids' Bibles, children's Bibles. We've always had one in our house, and when our son was first born, somebody gave us one. And we started reading stories to him and to our other kids as they came into the fold. And we've always had like a family devotion time where we would just read from the children's Bible to them when they were little. And what I found is oftentimes God speaks to me through the simplicity of the stories in the kids' Bible, because sometimes I think we miss the forest for the trees. And I remember very clearly 20-something years ago, we were living in Alabama at the time, and there was a church in Florida that was talking to us about going there to serve their church, and we were praying about going, and we really didn't think that we should go to start with. We were thinking that we were where we were going to be and kind of planted there, but God started stirring something in us. And I remember very clearly the night that we sat down to read from the children's Bible to our then about 1 or 2 year old son, and we opened it up just to the next story. We kept a little bookmark in there. The next story that opened up was the story where God called Abraham to leave his home and go to the land that God would show him. And we're like, God, you're kidding me. Out of the children's Bible. And seriously, God used that story to confirm for us a move from where we were to where he wanted us to go. So I'm big on kids' Bibles. If you have kids or you have grandkids and you don't have one, get one and just read them the stories. It creates the foundation in their lives of these stories of God. So we're going to read about Mary and Martha. Anybody know about Mary and Martha? Well, here we are from a kid's Bible. In the village of Bethany lived two sisters, Mary and Martha, and their brother Lazarus. Now, Lazarus was the guy that later on Jesus raised from the dead. So they were good friends. Martha saw Jesus walking through the village with his disciples. Please come to our home and visit with us, Martha said, and Jesus agreed. Welcome, Jesus, Martha said when Jesus arrived. Come and sit for a while. So Jesus made himself comfortable in the living room, and Martha ran to the kitchen to begin making dinner. She's a good Southern woman, right? And so Mary came in and sat on the floor near Jesus. Oh, how she loved hearing Jesus teach about God. She listened to every word he said. And in the kitchen, Martha heated the oven and chopped the vegetables and stirred a sauce for the meat. She mixed flour and oil for bread, and she rolled and kneaded the dough until it was ready to bake. And dinner was important. Everything had to be just right for Jesus. Would everything be ready on time? Martha was getting worried. Where was her sister Mary, and why wasn't she helping? So Martha wiped her hands on the towel. I could just see my mom in the kitchen being frustrated and getting that towel and wiping her hands and marching out of that kitchen. So she wipes her hand on the towel. She goes to look for Mary. She wasn't outside. She wasn't doing the laundry. She wasn't even taking a nap. Oh, there she was. Mary was sitting on the floor, not doing anything, just listening to Jesus. Martha thought, I'll ask Jesus what he thinks about that. So Martha stomped into the living room, Jesus, I have a lot of cooking and serving to do. Don't you care that my sister isn't working with me in the kitchen? Tell her to come and help me. Jesus looked at Martha and smiled. Martha, Martha, you're so worried and upset about many things, but only one thing is necessary, and that's what Mary's chosen. She's chosen the good thing, listening to me, and that will never be taken away from her. So what did Mary choose? Listening to Jesus. What did Martha choose? Cooking and serving. Is cooking and serving bad? No. But what was the best thing? Listening to Jesus. Now, I love this story, and I hate this story. I hate this story because I see myself in Martha. I've spent my fair share of time doing stuff for Jesus versus focusing on Jesus himself. But when you read this, you're wondering, why is Martha so mad? I mean, she's like mad. And all of a sudden, she comes into the living room and she grabs the mic from Jesus. And she's like, Jesus, you're all great and all that. And hold on, I'll let you finish in a second. But I need Mary in the kitchen. And how does Jesus respond? He doesn't condemn her. That's not who Jesus is. He speaks tenderly to her and he corrects her. And note to ourselves, when we're in volatile situations, we can still speak tenderly and with love. But Jesus said, Martha, dear Martha, you're fussing far too much and getting yourself worked up over nothing. Only one thing is essential, and Mary has chosen it. It's the main course, and it won't be taken away from her. Now, Mary chose the one thing, and I love how the Message calls it the main course. I mean, it's like the meat and taters, right? Jesus is front and center, and it could not be taken away from her. And don't miss this. There's a lot of things that can be taken away from us. Pretty much everything can be taken away from us. Our health can be taken away. Our finances can be taken away. Our job security can be taken away. Our family can be taken away. Our friends can be taken away. All stuff can be taken away. Jesus said, Mary chose the one thing that could not be taken away. Come hell or high water, what's the one thing that cannot be taken away? Your relationship with Jesus. It's the one thing that cannot be taken away. And if I were to condense this message into a sentence today, it would be this. We focus on what can't be taken away so that if or when our plans fail, our relationship with Jesus is strong no matter what. I don't even know why I put if in there. When our plans fail, our relationship with Jesus is strong no matter what. So how did Mary end up doing the right thing, the best thing? Again, it's not complicated. She chose it. She just chose to do the right thing, and that's the first point. Choose it. Mary chose to sit and listen to Jesus. Martha chose to cook and serve. But I always kind of wonder when I read a story like this in the Bible, what's the backstory, because it doesn't really tell us. Like, what's the story behind the story? And I think that Martha, is the plan A, planned out type person. And she's like, Jesus is coming over, big deal. She's got her Excel spreadsheet all worked out. She's got boxes to check off. She's a list maker and a box checker. So confession time. How many of you are list makers and box checkers? Come on. Nothing to be ashamed of. I am too. So, and I'm sure she gave her sister Mary a list. She said, look, I've got my list and here's your list. And maybe Mary was like, okay, sis, I can do that. I mean, I don't know how it happened, but Mary is just sitting there and Martha's fuming mad because she can't get her list done, right? Now, I don't know if Mary just had certain responsibilities that she didn't do, or if there were just unclarified expectations. I don't know. But Mary chose to sit with Jesus. She chose to. Now, Mary was not lazy. She made a choice. She was intentional. But when you choose growing your relationship with Jesus over some responsibility that is very, very important, do you ever feel guilty? I mean, I do. I'm like, I've got all these things to do. I've got all these people I've got to deal with. I've got these expectations, and I'm supposed to just hang out with Jesus? I'm supposed to take an hour or 30 minutes or whatever just to sit quietly and pray and read Scripture. I got all these things I got to do. Deadlines, expectations. Look, Mary just simply made Jesus the priority. She just made him first. She said, this is the most important thing. Like I said, it's not complicated, but is it hard? Yeah. She chose the best thing. Now, it's not wrong to make a meal. Somebody's got to cook. Somebody's got to clean. Somebody's got to do that stuff. But it seems like in this situation, what Martha was doing is she was putting her emphasis and her focus and her priority on the plans, and she forgot who she was planning it for. And it's easy for us when we're doing things for God to get so focused on what we're doing for God that we forget who we're doing it for. A year ago this week, this is Labor Day weekend, and last year at this time, the day after Labor Day, my mother-in-law had major back surgery. She's had major problems with the back for a long time. And so she lives in Atlanta, and my wife was, for many weeks, was in Atlanta or back and forth between here and Atlanta, becoming well acquainted with I-85, which is slightly better than I-77, but not a lot. And so back and forth, and the surgery went well. Took her a long time to get to a place where she could be independent. And but what they realized is she had waited too long to have the surgery, really, and there was nerve damage. So she is still today dealing with that. She's still today pretty much incapacitated. She can do a little bit at a time, but then she pretty much has to lay down. So this is going on, and this is starting to bring some stress into our life. And then in the spring of the year, we here at Rocky Mount, we're getting ready for Easter like we do every year. Easter's a big deal in the church. I think it should be. It's the resurrection, right? So we're getting ready for Easter, and we're bringing in the compassion experience. You guys remember the compassion experience? And I hope you sponsored a kid. We did, and I hope you're praying for your kid and you're communicating with your kid. But we brought them in, and just to be candid, we thought that they were bringing in a program with a project plan that we would just execute. And turns out they brought in a bunch of ideas, and we had to create the project plan and execute. Now that's fine, but it was a whole lot more work than we expected. And I was running point on that. So this added extra stress to my life. And then in early March, my wife's brother, who was 54 years old, suddenly unexpectedly died. Now, he had never been married. He never had kids. My wife's dad died several years ago. Her mom is down with her back. So guess where all the responsibility fell in the situation? On my wife. So here we are in this situation, and it wasn't just that he died. His life was a mess. His estate is still a mess. And I mean, it's a mess. If you come to me and you say, hey, I've got this situation, I bet it's worse. I bet it's not. It's bad. And so we're dealing with this. And then in April, I started having abdominal pain. I just thought stomach bug, whatever. It kind of went away. But then it would come back, and it'd go away, and it would come back, and it'd go away. And then it started getting worse. And in early June, I went to the doctor, thought it was appendicitis, and turned out there was something going on in my small intestine. And if you've been around here, you know what's going on. If you don't, I'll explain it. Long story short, there was something in my small intestine or on my small intestine, and scheduled exploratory surgery to figure it out. I didn't make it to the scheduled surgery on July the 4th. I was in so much pain, running high fever. I have to go to the emergency room. And when I say I was in pain, I mean, I have never felt anything like this in my life. And I'm sure there's pain that's worse than what I felt, but I don't want to know what it is. It hurt. And I got in there, and I didn't realize how bad I was. But I know this. I was scared. I was scared. Before I got to the hospital, I knew if you ever have something go bad wrong inside of you, you know it. And something was going bad wrong inside of me, and I knew it. And I just started praying. I started crying out to God. I'm lying on the bed in a fetal position, just trying to get, look, I'm on 800 milligrams of ibuprofen. It's not touching it. I'm cold sweats, and I'm just crying out to God. And I want you to know that God did something very special for me in that moment that he doesn't always do, to be quite frank. But he came to me and he brought me some peace. And I mean, in the middle of that, all of a sudden, I was overwhelmed not with fear, but with peace. I can't explain it. It was supernatural. And I'm there and I'm talking with my wife. And what we realized, we get to the hospital and the doctors are looking at me, and people have told me that I looked like I was dying. I had lost all my color. I was ashy. And I'm going through the thing. What happened is there was a tumor inside of me that had completely obstructed my bowel. And that's a bad place to be. So they had to do emergency surgery, and they find out there's this grapefruit-sized cancerous tumor in there. But when they're prepping me for surgery, the doctors are looking at me, and they've got that look in their eye, and the nurses, like, this is bad. And they're preparing us for the worst. I mean, the worst. Like, they're thinking this is not going to go well. And they're looking at my wife and I, and we're like, we're good. And they're like, but do you understand? We're good. You got to understand, God's given us a peace. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know if this is going to turn out good or not, but we're good. Why? Because Jesus was with us. That's all I can say. He made the difference. Oh, and in the middle of all this, I have a 20-year term life insurance policy that expires in December of this year. I was in the underwriting process for a new policy when I got cancer, so guess what? Funny, not funny. What am I saying? We had plans. We had goals, financial goals. Look, we're doing the Dave Ramsey plan. We're starting a new financial peace class in a couple of weeks. Next week, information's in your bulletin. Next week, there's an intro for it. I strongly encourage you to do it. I mean, we're working the plan. We're getting there. And then all of a sudden, you guys have big medical things go on. You know what happens to your financial plans? Relationship goals, man. We have relationship goals. We make family a priority. We're keeping family a priority. And in the midst of all this chaos, look, life dropped a grenade in our plans. They're gone, man. What plan? Now, this is what I know. I am normal. This stuff happens to everybody. Not these specific things that happen to me necessarily, but life happens. Stuff is happening to you, has happened to you, or is going to happen to you. It's life. And we make our plans and we trust God and we move forward as best we can. But what we really need to do is we need to do what Mary did. She put Jesus first. Because if Jesus is first and the thing that can't be taken away is most important in your life, then it really doesn't matter what happens, because the thing that is most important in your life cannot be taken away. Now, what Mary did is not only did she decide, not only did she make a choice to spend some time with Jesus, she actually did it. A lot of times we'll come into a church service like this and we'll get convicted, or we'll get challenged, or we'll get encouraged, and we decide that we're going to do something, and we walk out of here and nothing changes. You got to actually do it. One of my favorite little riddles of all time is 2 birds sat on a wire and one decided to fly away. How many birds were left? 2. The one only decided to fly away. And that's where a lot of us are. We have to take action. And so Mary sat before the Master, hanging on every word he said. She didn't just choose it, she did it. She was there. It created conflict with her sister, but she did it anyway. She said, hey, it's not just a good idea. It's something I'm going to do. And she was hanging on every word. I love that picture. Because look, anybody can hear Jesus. Probably all of you here today are at least okay with Jesus. And you may be here and you may be just checking church out, or maybe you've been away from church and you're coming back to church, or you're just really trying to explore the whole Jesus thing. And generally speaking, you're okay with Jesus. Because when you read about him, he was a good man and he did good things. He did a whole lot to elevate women's rights, and he was a good guy. But it's a whole other thing to hear Jesus than it is to listen and obey. It's a whole other thing to believe that he is who he said he was, that he was God who came from heaven to earth. He lived a perfect life. He died on the cross for the forgiveness of our sins, and on the third day he rose from the grave. It's one thing to hear. It's another thing to completely adjust your life and align it with the one who says he came to save your soul. Because the God of the universe doesn't come into your life just to hang out. He comes in there to make a difference, to change you, to challenge you, to make you more like him, to show you what's right. He comes to make a difference. So here's Jesus. Are you like Martha? Busy? Good things. Too busy to work on your relationship with Jesus? Or are you like Mary? She was totally dialed in. She was totally tuned in. She was hanging on every word. In Acts, there's a story where Peter and John had healed a crippled man. And Luke records the story where Jesus had already been crucified, and the religious leaders thought they were done with Jesus, but all these disciples kept preaching about Jesus, and Jesus just wouldn't go away. So they brought in Peter and John, and they basically put them on trial. And they're saying, like, you guys have got to quit talking about Jesus. And then this is what Luke says they said about him. The members of the council were amazed when they saw the boldness of Peter and John, for they could see that they were ordinary men with no special training in the Scriptures. They also recognized them as men who had been with Jesus. And I love these guys. I love that they were uneducated. Maybe they weren't the sharpest tools in the shed. That's encouraging to me. But they had been with Jesus. And I just have to say, when people run into me, do they know I've been with Jesus? When people run into you, do they know you've been with Jesus? And I want to propose to you that irregardless of what your 5-year plan is and what your 5-year goals are, do people know you've been with Jesus? Because that's the only thing that can't be taken away. And I don't know how, I'm a planner, but I don't know how my plans are going to go. I don't know 5 years from now, 10 years from now. I really don't know how this stuff is going to work out. But I know the last 1 year of my life has reminded me of something. My relationship with Jesus cannot be taken away. And on July the 4th, when I was in so much pain and I was so afraid, I knew that Jesus was with me. And my wife and I, as we went through that whole time, we knew that he was with us. And we're in the hospital, and the doctors are looking at us like we have two heads because we're just okay, we're at peace. Jesus was with us. And I want to say today that I am blessed beyond comprehension because I am currently in remission, and I am pretty excited about that. But I have a very rare cancer, leiomyosarcoma. Less than 1% of adults who get cancer have this cancer. There's not a lot out there on it, and there's not a lot they can do about it. So it could recur. But I'm not going to live in the reality of the what ifs. I'm going to live in the reality of Jesus is my Lord and Savior. He's my rock. He's my anchor. I'm believing him for healing. And I'm trusting him, and I'm walking forward in faith. And whatever happens, happens. Because it's all going to be okay. And I want you to know is, yeah, you can clap. And I'm glad you can clap for me. That's exciting. But you can clap for yourself too. All you have to do is decide. God's done all the work for you. And as we prepare for communion this morning, you need to understand that when it comes to this whole salvation thing, when it comes to this whole grace thing, it's nothing that we've done. It's what Jesus did for us. And a couple thousand years ago or so, he gave his very life on the cross so that you and I could have a right relationship with God. And the Bible says that on the night that he was betrayed, he was meeting with his disciples, what we call the Last Supper. And then they didn't know it was the Last Supper. To them, it was just another Passover supper, something they celebrated every year. And they did it because God had delivered the children of Israel out of Egypt, and God said, do this to remember this so you never forget. And Jesus said, well, I'm going to give it a new meaning. From now on, I want you to remember not just that God delivered the children of Israel out of Egypt. I want you to remember that I'm delivering you from your sins. So he took the cup that had the wine in it, and he poured it. And he said, this is my blood that is spilled out for you for the forgiveness of your sins. And he took the bread that they always took, and he broke it, and he said, this is my body that is broken for you. And in that moment, like I said, he created a new meaning for what we call communion or the Lord's Supper. And when we as a church partake of this, and by the way, you don't have to be a member of Rocky Mount to do this here with us today. That is the thing between you and God, and we welcome everyone, anybody here who wants to come take this. And it's just an opportunity because Jesus said to do this to remember him. And it's an opportunity for you to reflect and remember what he has done for you. This is a physical moment. It's a spiritual moment. So I want to encourage you as we're preparing, as our stewards come forward, as you're just sitting there, take some time to pray. Take some time to reflect. Take some time to just sit with Jesus. Forget about lunch. Martha, it'll be there. Live in the moment and sit with Jesus. The stewards are going to get into place to help serve you. If you're new here, the way we do this, there's two ways you can take communion here. You can take it by intinction, which is a fancy church word for you take the bread and you dip it into the cup, or you can take the bread and take a separate little cup for yourself. Either way is fine. That's completely up to you. The ushers will guide you down, and you'll come down these aisles right here. And we'll just ask that when you go back up, if you're in the middle section, come back up the center aisle, and if you're on the outside sections, go back up the far outside aisles. That way we don't run into each other. There's nothing spiritual about that. It's just practical. So if the ushers would please come forward.
lost, but He brought me. His love for me. His love for me. Who the Son sets free, oh, is free indeed. I'm a child of God, yes I am. Free at last, He has ransomed me. His grace runs deep. While I was a slave to sin, Jesus died for me. Yes, He died for me. Who the Son sets free, oh, is free indeed. I'm a child of God, yes I am. In my Father's house, there's a place for me. I'm a child of God, yes I am. I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am. I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am. Oh, I am who you say I am. Oh, who the Son sets free, oh, is free indeed. I'm a child of God, yes I am. In my Father's house, there's a place for me. I'm a child of God, yes I am. In my Father's house, there's a place for me. I'm a child of God, yes I am.
Amen. I just encourage you and challenge you. Spend some time sitting with Jesus this week. God bless y'all. Have a great one.